Hey guys, welcome back to another video in my new healing series. Today we're covering the Resto Druid in Shadowlands. As always, we'll start with a basic overview. The Resto Druid's main strengths are its ability to heal while being on the move, and is best in smaller group content, like arenas or 5-man dungeons. And of course, it's so good at healing on the move because the way it heals is through HOTS, or healing over time effects. While this has its upsides, this also means that you cannot simply wait until loads of damage has come in on your group and then blanket everyone in some rejuves and think your job is done. Because that rejuve heals over time, if any additional damage is taken while your ally is low health, they could just die, even with your rejuve active. The Druid's weakness is that it has very few ways to immediately pick a low health ally back up, especially if the damage came unexpectedly. The next thing to know about Resto Druids is that this spec has many keybinds, especially if you want to be at all optimized, so just something to think about. Now that we have an overview of the Resto Druid, let's jump right into our healing rotation. Rotations for the Resto Druid are a little different depending on the content you're doing, but in general, you want to keep Rejuvenation and Life Bloom up on your tank, and then put Rejuve on your party members as they start taking damage. Rejuve is our bread and butter heal over time effect, and Life Bloom is a stronger heal over time effect that can only be up on one target at a time, thus we give it to our tank. The Druid wants to be a proactive, predictive healer, getting HOTS out before huge damage starts coming in, so that those HOTS have time to start stabilizing people. Thusly, if you are not familiar with the content you're running yet, and when the damage will come, it might be best to just always keep your group members blanketed in Rejuvenation. Then, once you become a little more familiar with the dungeon or raid, you want to start putting your Rejuve on people once they're going to start taking damage so you're not wasting mana. Okay, so Rejuve is out on your party members and Life Bloom is up on your tank. Now what? Our other two main healing spells are Regrowth, which is our larger single target heal, and Wild Growth, which is an AoE heal. So if someone in your party takes a large amount of damage, you can pick them back up with Regrowth, which provides a moderate-sized instant heal as well as an additional healing over time effect. If many people in your party got hit with a larger AoE damage effect, cast Wild Growth, which simply blankets up to 6 people within 30 yards in another heal over time effect. Next up is Efflorescence. This is our group-wide AoE heal that we simply place on the ground wherever the largest clump of party members are. We should try to have this down while our group is in combat as much as possible. Our final healing spell is Swift Mend. This is our only real oh shit button if a tank or someone else in our party got taken down very low unexpectedly. Swift Mend used to just be a large instant heal with a cooldown. It has since changed in Shadowlands, however, and Swift Mend will now consume one of our HOTS on the target to immediately heal them for a large amount. This is on a very short 15-second cooldown, but please remember that this now requires a HOT to be active in order for it to be usable, and that it will consume that HOT. So to summarize, keep Rejuve and Life Bloom on the tank while they're in combat. Toss out Rejuves to party members as they start taking damage, and always have your Efflo down. Once larger damage starts coming in, pick up a single ally with Regrowth or many allies with Wild Growth. Use Swift Mend for emergency he's about to die moments, and that's our fairly basic healing rotation. Now let's get into our cooldowns. Our basic healing cooldown is Tranquility on a 3-minute CD. This is a channeled ability that will heal all allies within 40 yards for a large amount over 7 seconds, and will also leave a small HOT behind on the allies that were healed by Trank. The healing from this spell is increased by 100% if you are in a party as opposed to a raid. Again, something to just keep in mind. Next up is a returning spell in Shadowlands in Nature's Swiftness. This will allow you to cast your next regrowth, rebirth, or entangling roots instantly, for free, and while in any druid form. Your regrowth will also heal for an additional 100% with this effect. This is on a 1-minute cooldown and is primarily used in high damage, hectic situations where you can't afford the time it takes to cast regrowth or rebirth. Next up are defensive cooldowns. We have Barkskin as a personal defensive on a 1-minute cooldown that will reduce all damage we take by 20% for 8 seconds. We can use this while CC'd and in any druid form. And, speaking of druid forms, I want to take this time to mention Bear form as a pseudo defensive ability. Not enough druids utilize the benefits of shapeshifting in my humble opinion, and so here's my brief shout out. If you are taking a lot of damage or you know a large hit is coming, instead of using a long cooldown ability like Barkskin, simply shapeshift into Bear form to soak a large hit and then shift back out to continue healing. This costs literally nothing and will increase your armor by a whopping 220% and your stamina by 25%. Okay? Now, moving on to our regularly scheduled program. Ironbark, next up, is our external defensive that we give to an ally to reduce their damage by 20% for 12 seconds on a 1.5-minute cooldown. The Druid is one of the only classes that has this kind of external DR available. Moving right along to our next unique cooldown, which is Rebirth. This is our Battle Res effect, which allows us to revive a dead ally while we're in combat every 10 minutes. Druids are the only healer in the game with a Battle Res. Finally, let's cover some utility cooldowns. Innervate is a spell that will allow us to cast any and all spells for free for 10 seconds every 3 minutes. If we are in a raid with other healers, we can give this ability to another healer, and we still receive a 50% benefit from doing that. Next up is Stampeding Roar, which will now be baseline for all druids, thank Christ. This is on a 2-minute cooldown, and we increase the movement speed of all friendly players within 15 yards by 60% for 8 seconds. This is hugely impactful in raids or Mythic Plus dungeons to avoid large fight mechanics, since we can get everyone out of the area very quickly. Finally, we have Nature's Cure, which is our baseline Dispel effect. This will remove all magic, curse, and poison effects on a target every 8 seconds. If you plan on playing a healer, please set your dispels to a keybind and set up your raid or party profiles in-game to show when they are affected by something you can dispel. I've been a little shocked over the course of the PTR and the beta by how few healers are using their dispels. Finally, last but not least, as a Resto Druid, we have Ursol's Vortex baseline. We will no longer enjoy the Wombo combo in Mythic Plus or PvP of Vortex plus Typhoon, however, as Typhoon is now tied to Balance Druids and thus tied to the Balance Affinity. Ursol's Vortex is a neat utility spell for pack management and will essentially pull mobs affected by this back to wherever you place the Vortex at. And that wraps up our baseline cooldowns. Let's hop into our talents and start trying to synergize our kit. First, we should take a brief minute to talk about our mastery. Basically, our healing is increased by whatever percent our mastery is for each of our hots. This healing bonus can become quite powerful, so keep that in mind. Now, as is the case with most classes in the game, the Resto Druid's talent tree can be pretty easily separated into raiding content, smaller group content like Mythic Plus, and even PvP content like Arenas. So, to start us off with, take Cenarian Ward in Mythic Plus as another spell to keep active on your tank. This is a large, inexpensive heal we can have active every 30 seconds. Take Nourish in Arenas, since Cenarian Ward would likely be dispelled or stolen, and Nourish grants you triple bonus from your mastery, which is perfect since you only have 2 other party members in Arenas. Take Abundance in Raids, since you'll likely have many rejuves active, and thus can have very cheap, reliable regrowths. Our level 25 row is Mobility, so take what you like. But really, just take Wild Charge. It's universally helpful and provides great mobility options for any druid form you might be in. For our level 30 row, we're always going to take Feral Affinity for Mythic Plus and even casual solo content, because the damage you do in cat form as a Resto Druid is effing bonkers. We will take Balance Affinity for Mythic Plus only on Sanguine weeks, so we get the added pack management of Typhoon. And you should consider Guardian Affinity if you're primarily doing arenas and worried about being trained by the enemy comp. For row 35, we'll almost always take Mighty Bash since we don't have a baseline stun, and having a stun is just a great utility option. Heart of the Wild can be considered in lower keys where you want to maximize your cat form damage, or perhaps in raids where a single target stun isn't as helpful. Moving on to row 40, if you want a very safe, passive, set it and forget it talent, take Cultivation, which just gives your Rejuve healing over time effect a small bonus. If you're worried about a specific dangerous mechanic in a raid or Mythic Plus dungeon one-shotting your group, consider taking Incarnation, as this will massively buff both your survivability and your healing. For anything else, arenas, higher Mythic Plus keys, etc., you'll want to go with Soul of the Forest. This will massively increase the healing of your next regrowth, rejuve, or wild growth every time you use your Swift Bent. This is a great talent to help stabilize your group after large damage. For row 45, we'll take Inner Peace in raids and high Mythic Plus to reduce the cooldown of our Tranquility. We'll take Spring Blossoms in Mythic Plus keys that don't require a ton of movement, so our group can get extra benefit from standing in our F-Low. And we'll take Overgrowth in arenas or more single-target healing situations where you need to soak one person in a ton of hots very quickly. Finally, in our last row, Germination is a safe, all-purpose talent that we'll take more often than not, since 2 rejuves on a tank is just incredibly powerful. Photosynthesis is an interesting option, particularly in light of some coming legendary effects. This will give Life Bloom a chance to do some extra passive healing on your target, or cause your hots to tick faster if you put Life Bloom on yourself. Flourish is something we would consider in a very high AoE damage situation where Wild Growth isn't going to cut it, and Trank is on cooldown. This will make our hots last longer and heal faster for 8 seconds on a 1.5 minute cooldown. And now, with our talents done, let's talk about which legendary effects are looking best for us in Shadowlands. First up is a neutral legendary effect available to all Druid specs, Circle of Life and Death. This will increase the speed that your hots heal by 15%, and as an added bonus, will also increase your dot damage speed by 25%. This has some interesting uses in both arenas and lower Mythic Plus where fights won't last long and you just want to maximize both your healing and damage output in short burst windows. Our 2 real contenders are the Dark Titan's Lesson and Verdant Infusion. Dark Titan allows us to have 2 Life Blooms up at once and increase Life Bloom's final heal by 25%. This is the legendary I mentioned earlier that offered some interesting synergy with our photosynthesis talent. We of course would pair the 2 together in order to reap both benefits from the photosynthesis talent by keeping 1 Life Bloom on ourselves and the other Life Bloom on our tank. More testing does need to be done with this pairing to see how it fares in consistently high damage situations, but it so far looks strong. Verdant Infusion is our other strong legendary option, and this is the clear winner in my opinion, as it has no downsides, no trade-offs, and no special use cases. Swiftman just gets strictly better. As Swiftman's main weakness was its cost in having to consume and then reapply a hot to a target, the legendary is now a go-to pick for me and many others. Swiftmend will now no longer consume a hot and will instead increase the duration of your hots by 6 seconds, and you still get the large burst heal that Swiftmend provides on that short 15-second cooldown. So, Verdant Infusion for the win, man. That wraps up our noteworthy legendaries, and brings us to the end of our Resto Druid guide. I'm noticing that while most of my guide videos are starting to get some decent views, comments are far and few between. So, don't be a monkey. leave me a comment letting me know what kind of content you enjoy playing, and maybe I'll start making guides about that. Drop me a like and a sub and a stinking comment if you like my videos, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!